just going back in time, and I remember, I think we kind of connected a few years back. You of course started Zeda in India. You got some really, really solid kind of early adopter traction. You raised a venture round in India. What was that point in time in this life cycle in the company back when you were in India, where you thought that, look, I have to move to the US now physically as a founder, and this whole kind of remote is not going to work, or India B2B is
Mm.
not going to work. Like, talk to us about those exact kind of milestones.
So when we started, uh, it was pandemic, like 2020 and 2021 early. So it was still not physically possible to travel. And we didn't know also back then the US market. W- I had worked in USA. I had been for a year with branch.io, which is a SaaS company. But the scope of the US market, we were not able to comprehend. So when we raised funding, we were like, okay, we have to shift to USA. But you there's no trigger point for it initially because you are focused on building. For us, that trigger point happened. Uh, so we had that I have to shift to USA. That was very clear from day one. But when was not clear. So as soon as we got our funding, I started my visa process, uh, O1 visa, but there was no rush for it. I think there were two main trigger points which caused the rush. One was definitely after initial few customers, we realized that no one knows us. Like the US companies where the product management, like our product is for product managers, where mm, Bay Area is the first to adopt, Bay Area is the first to come up with practices. The top product people, leaders, PMs are here. I'm not saying other people are not good. I'm just saying that density is here. Uh, so being in India, we were not getting that exposure. People did not know our brand. People did not know us. If we are cold messaging or emailing them, they are ignoring us out. So, and when we even get a lead, product board or other competition who are local, they were getting the traction. So, how do we get to the market? How do we get it? And the brand was unknown. So, how do you build a brand in the mind of top people? uh, or the early adopters. And the second trigger point was I I think after pandemic, I first time went to USA during July, August of 2022. And then I realized that I'm doing a terrible mistake by being there longer. I need to shift ASAP. Because I could see people are building here. I could talk to people directly. I could see the enthusiasm here versus there, at least for our product. Uh, in India, it was still about project management. Here, it was product management. So I was like, okay, let's just pack our bags and shift there. And as soon as the visa and everything got sorted, 6 months later, I shifted to USA.
Yeah, and this is brings up such an important point, right? I mean, as investors and in the ecosystem in general, you get this advice, especially when you're starting up in India, you're in the cross-border SaaS space, that, oh, go to the US as early as possible, go on day zero, right? Like, sit with the customers. But the reality as a founder is that there are so many constraints in your life, right? There's a capital constraint. You have built an early team. Does the team have a remote culture? What's that right point, right? I mean, it's actually not a very straightforward call of saying, hey, let me just, like, whatever, just go to the US.
And I think one thing which I have been observing with a lot of people do India USA travel, but I realized that it's very hard. When I say hard, uh, for cost saving, you have to try to figure out which is the cheapest Airbnb, where will I eat, how will I commute, and then uh, what is going to be the work situation, how I'm gonna do calls, and then you're traveling to multiple cities and meetings. So you are not able to get that focus zone
Hmm.
where you can just do one thing very good. And now imagine what you just said that initially everyone is saying that go fit where customer is, but you have to do hiring call here, you have to do collaboration call in India, and then you are trying to figure, okay, where do I eat, where do I stay, how long this Airbnb is, how do I check out luggage. So your 20 to 30% mindset is taken by all these things as a stage where you have to build a company, product, culture. You are spending 30% of your mental bandwidth doing all these things. So it's just very inefficient.
Yeah, and maybe for let's say a very, very young founder out of college who has no baggage, you can come here, whatever, take a Airbnb, two, three people, start hacking stuff, but then you don't have kind of support back in India. I think in your case, you had built a team. I think you had that early adoption. There was some base that you could
Yes.
use to kind of springboard into the US market.